Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of the first round of the 2017 Altibox Norway Chess Tournament. The strongest chess tournament of the year with 10 of the top 12 from the world ranking participating. The first round took place on Tuesday the 6th of June, the day after we had a blitz tournament to determine the pairings. Magnus Carlsen won the blitz tournament and he was allowed to choose his number first. He didn't pick the number which would give him white in the first and the last round and perfect alternation between being white and black. He chose to pick the number which would pair him with Carlsen-So in the first round. The world number 1 against the world number 2. That may have been a smart choice, because So is the only player in the field who has not won a classical game against Carlsen. So far before this game they had played 8 games, 2 wins for Carlsen, 6 draws, and with white, Carlsen had 2.5 out of 3 against Carlsen-So. Before we look at that game, a few snippets about the tournament rules. No drawers are allowed. The players are not allowed to talk to each other, and they cannot agree to a draw unless there's a threefold repetition or a clearly drawn position on the board. The time control is 100 minutes for 40 moves, then 50 minutes for 20 moves, and then 15 minutes for the rest of the game, with an increment of 30 seconds per move, starting only from move 61. So for the first 60 moves there are no increments. And the players are used to play classical games with an increment, so that is something for them to be careful of. The prize fund, a total prize fund of €249,000, which is $281,000. A first prize of €70,000, which is $79,000. Let's look at this first round clash between the two strongest chess players in the world. Carlsen has earned the right to play white with his strong performance in the blitz tournament. He opened e4, e5 from So, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, Carlsen castled, knight f6, d3, where we are in the gioco piano, which is Italian for slow, quiet, soft game. A lot of maneuvering, and that's exactly what Carlsen likes. So castled, and an unusual move from Carlsen, h3, which is the 7th most popular move in this position, but not a bad move. d6, c3, a6, a4, and So played bishop e6. Carlsen took that bishop, and f takes e6. In the live commentary, Grandmaster Nigel Short gave a little lecture about this pawn formation, d6, e6 and e5. He said black has the f-line and an extra pawn in the center, but that pawn block there is inflexible. The moment you play d5, it becomes a creaking pawn structure and it may start to wobble and disintegrate. It's okay when it's like this, but you should maneuver behind this pawn structure instead of aiming to advance with d5. Carlsen played b4, kicking the bishop, bishop a7, and bishop e3. Remarkable decision. Carlsen decides on a symmetrical structure and claims that his space advantage on the queen side is worth something. Because of course So took on e3, and now Carlsen has that same pawn structure in the center. Yes, he has more space on the queen side, but as he said afterwards, if you play like this you have to be really accurate, and it's not easy to win this position. But as we know, Carlsen won this type of position many a time. Knight e7, knight bd2 and knight g6. Carlsen later said that it was a good maneuver for black. d4, queen e7, queen b3, the king moved out of that diagonal from a2 to g8. b5, gaining even more space on the queen side. Black took, a takes b5, and here So took on d4. And here's an instructive moment. Most club players would play e takes d4 to straighten out the pawns, but then the f4 square comes available for that knight on g6. So Carlsen took with the c-pawn to make sure that the knight on g6 remains a bad piece. e5. Carlsen took on a8. So took back, and rook c1 from the world champion. And here So goes for the most critical line. He took on d4. He takes d4. Knight takes e4. Knight takes, queen takes, and Carlsen wins his pawn back on c7. Rook f8 from Wesley So. You have to be careful with your back rank. In the live commentary, Grandmaster Short showed the variation that you cannot infiltrate with your rook. Rook a1 check is not good because of king f2, good move. And if you now think I'm going to solve my back rank problems with h6, then you find out that you'll be immediately checkmated. Rook c8 check, king h7, and queen g8 is already checkmate very quickly. So Wesley So kept his rook on his own back rank. Rook f8, good move, with the idea of moving the knight to f4 with some threats. Queen c2 from Carlsen. As he said afterwards, I played queen c2. I thought it was a good move. Let's play queen c2 and then we'll think again. Queen d5 from Wesley So. Carlsen kept chasing the queen, queen c4. Queen takes, rook takes, and king g8, which is a good move to have rook f7 available in case white plays rook c7 to protect the b7 pawn. b6, preparing rook c7. h6, knight d2, knight f4, rook c7, rook f7 as planned. Knight c4, attacking the d6 pawn, and knight d5, attacking the rook. So rook c8 check, and now Wesley So said he had missed, that he cannot play king h7 as he had planned, because then there is rook d8, and as Wesley So, white wins. White will win the d6 pawn, and the rooks will remain on the board. More material will remain on the board. And So thought this was a winning endgame for white. So Wesley So did not play king h7, he played rook f8. And Carlsen swapped those rooks. And he can now win a pawn. Knight takes d6, knight takes b6, and knight takes b7. White is a pawn up, but there's very little material left. And as Carlsen said later, his knight on b7 is on a very bad circuit. That's how he phrased it. King e7, king f2, king e6, king e3, and king d5. Black's plan is that his knight can start harassing the white king, driving it away from the pawn with checks. And that's why Carlsen played knight a5 to stop knight c4 check. Knight a4, knight b3, knight b2. White cannot coordinate his knight and king to have real winning chances here. They were saying in the analysis after the game that the knight had to go to e2, but it's not possible for white to get that in a version that gives him winning chances. Knight d2, knight d1 check, king e2, knight back to b2, knight b3 to defend the pawn, king c4, and Carlsen now went for the g7 pawn with knight c5. King took the d4 pawn, knight e6 check, king e4, knight takes the g7 pawn, knight c4, king f2, king f4, g3 check, king e4, g4, king f4. The black king is very active and there's very little material left. All black needs to do is to make sure he gets the two white pawns. He can even sacrifice his knight for the last pawn if needed. And the game went on. Draw offers were not allowed. but this is, for a top grandmaster, easy enough to defend. Knight h5 check, king g5, king g3, knight e5, knight f4, king f6, king h4, and knight g6 check. Normally you don't want to go in a pawn endgame, a pawn down, but in this case Wesley-So had seen that the pawn endgame is also a draw. King g3, so took the knight, king takes, and this pawn endgame is indeed a draw. King g6, h4, king back, king f3, king f7, and Wesley-So has learned a long time ago how to defend this. Make sure that he has the opposition at a critical moment. King e3, king e7, king d3, king d7, king c4, and now you have to be careful that you don't go too far in your opposition attempts, because of course king c6 is a big blunder here, because then the king is outside of the square of the passed pawn. Just show you a quick variation. White then wins with g5, h takes g5, and then h5. And after g4, white has king d4. And the white king is in the square of the black pawn, but the black king is not in the square of the white pawn, and white wins easily. So back to king c4. Of course, Wesley-So did not play king c6, he played king e6, king d4, king d6, he has the opposition, king e4, king e6, king f4, king f6, king e4, king e6, and after the 63rd move, king f4, there was a move repetition and the players could now agree to a draw. In the interviews after the game, Magnus Carlsen said, "What I did with bishop e3 was too tame, and I underestimated the knight c6, e7, g6 maneuver. If you play bishop e3, you need to be extremely precise afterwards to get anywhere at all. If you don't do that, it will peter out," which it did. Wesley-So didn't say much. He said that he was disappointed with his blitz result the day before, and that he said he was slightly worse the whole game. These are the results of the first round of Norway Chess 2017. As you can see, we had 4 draws, and Hikaru Nakamura from the USA beat Anish Giri from the Netherlands. Giri had a horrible blitz game the day before where he lost his last 5 games, and now he lost the first classical game as well. The second round will be played on Wednesday, June the 7th, and I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. Hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. And I'm looking forward to your comments. If you liked the video, please spread the word and please share the video on YouTube. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you very much for watching.